On the night of April 6th and into the morning of April 7th, Venus, the planet that governs every love you have ever wanted and every love that has ever hurt you, moves into an exact conjunction with the North Node of Fate. This is not a minor transit. This is not a routine alignment. This is one of the rarest configurations the sky produces, and it is happening right now in your life, at a moment that is not accidental. And if you have been feeling lately like your entire romantic past, the losses, the choices, the ones who stayed and the ones who didn't, the version of yourself that loved before you knew better, has been pressing up against the present with unusual force, keep watching. Because what is happening in the sky right now is the reason, and I will show you exactly what it means. Something has been different in the past several weeks. You have felt it without being able to name it. It has not been the ordinary difficulty of a hard season, that kind you recognize, that you know how to endure. This has been quieter than that, and somehow harder because of the quiet. Like a current moving beneath still water, pulling things you thought were settled toward the surface. You have been going about your days with the competence you have spent decades developing, managing what needs to be managed, showing up where you need to show up. And underneath all of that ordinary function, something has been moving. Something that does not announce itself. Something that waits for the moments when the noise of the day finally clears and you are alone with yourself. And then it rises. You have been thinking about love in a way you haven't for a long time. Not with the urgency of wanting something new. More like a reckoning. Like old photographs surfacing in a drawer you thought you'd cleaned out years ago. A face, a choice, a version of yourself you can barely recognize but also know completely. And you haven't been sure what to do with any of it, so you've mostly been carrying it, quietly, through the ordinary hours of your days. That is where you are right now, and that is exactly where this video begins. You are not alone in this room. Thousands of people are watching this in the same narrow window of ours, and almost every one of them is carrying some version of what you are carrying right now. The particular ache of love that has taught you something enormous and cost you something real. That is what this transit is moving through. Not just your chart, but the collective body of everyone who has ever loved deeply and paid the full price for it. If this is landing for you, if you felt something shift in the first minute of this video, click the like button now. It helps more people find this content at exactly the moment they need it. Subscribe if you haven't already, and leave a comment below. Tell me, what did love cost me and what did it give me in return? Write it plainly. You will be surprised what happens when you say it out loud. Now let's go deeper. Because what this transit is doing in your life right now deserves far more than a headline. Let's begin with the body, because that is where this transit has been living before you had any words for it. There is a specific quality of tiredness you have been carrying that is different from ordinary exhaustion. It does not lift after sleep. You can get 8 hours and wake up in the morning still holding something heavy, something that feels less like fatigue and more like unfinished emotional labor. Your body has been doing work while you rest, processing something that your waking mind keeps trying to step around. And when you wake, there is often a residue, not quite sadness, not quite longing, but something in that family. A low hum, like a frequency you cannot quite identify but cannot entirely ignore. You go through the motions of your morning, and the hum is still there underneath the coffee, underneath the first tasks of the day, underneath the presentation of yourself to the world. What is your body actually holding? It is holding years of love, the weight of every significant emotional connection you have ever made, the ones that opened you, and the ones that closed you back down, the ones that gave you your finest hours, and the ones that taught you through real suffering where your limits actually are. That accumulated weight is not a burden you are doing something wrong by carrying. It is the physical record of a life lived with full emotional engagement. But right now, in the days around April 6th and 7th, that weight is being reorganized. Venus approaching the node is like a sorting happening at the level of the nervous system, and the body registers that sorting before the mind can. Your sleep has been unusual, not necessarily disturbed in the way of nightmares, but textured in a way you notice. Dreams that are vivid without being dramatic. Old places, childhood homes, apartments from your 20s, locations that carry emotional history you thought you had fully integrated. People you haven't thought about in years arriving in your sleep, with the casual ease of someone who lives there. An ex-partner sitting across from you at a table, not with tension but with a strange peace, saying something you cannot quite remember when you wake. A parent, perhaps, or someone who shaped the earliest architecture of how you understood love and what it demanded of you. You wake, and for a moment, you are somewhere else, somewhere earlier, some version of your life that feels simultaneously far away and startlingly present. And then you are here, in this room, in this body, in this version of your story. And the transition takes a beat longer than usual. This is the transit at work in your nervous system. This is Venus moving toward her meeting with destiny, and your unconscious body knows it before your conscious mind has caught up. Now let's talk about what has been happening in your relationships. Not the dramatic ruptures, but the quieter shifts that have been harder to name. You have likely noticed a change in your tolerance, things that you have managed for years with a kind of practiced grace, accommodations you made, adjustments to your own needs, the small compressions you accepted in order to keep something intact or peaceful or moving forward, have been feeling less manageable, less natural. The grace you brought to those compressions is running thin, and in its absence is something raw. Not anger exactly, more like a refusal that has been forming slowly, underground, for longer than you realized. A quiet no that does not yet have a voice, but is becoming too large to keep swallowing. And in that same window, you may have noticed that certain old connections have been calling your attention. Not through contact, not through action, but through thought. People from your past who shaped the way you love, the way you give, the way you disappear into someone else, or protect yourself from disappearing. They are surfacing, not because you want them back. That is not what this is about. But because the patterns they helped write in you are still running. They are still operating in your current relationships, in the way you approach closeness, in the specific and characteristic moves you make, when intimacy deepens toward a certain threshold, and something in you reaches for an exit or a distance or a softening of the risk. Venus moving toward the node is shining a light directly on those patterns so clearly you can no longer look past them with your usual skill. Your own sense of worth, specifically in the domain of love, of being chosen, of being wanted by the people you want, has been in an unusual review. This is not the review that happens in a crisis, not the sharp emergency reassessment when something breaks open dramatically. This is quieter and therefore more difficult to address. It is the kind of review that happens in small moments. In the pause before you ask for something you need, when you feel the familiar hesitation, the assessment of whether the request is too much, too needy, too revealing of how much you actually care. In the moment after someone has been kind to you, when your instinct is not to simply receive the kindness, but to immediately reciprocate, to level the debt, to restore the balance as quickly as possible, because being owed something by another person feels dangerously exposing. In the private acknowledgement late at night that there are things you want from love, real specific things that you have stopped letting yourself fully want, because wanting them fully made you feel too vulnerable to the possibility of not getting them. Venus on the North Node is doing something precise here. She is moving the question of your worth in love from the background to the foreground. She is making it too large to manage around. And the exhaustion you have been feeling, the tiredness that does not lift with sleep, is in part the exhaustion of someone who has been managing around a very large question for a very long time. There has been a particular kind of cognitive fog around decisions involving love and commitment. Not a fog of confusion exactly, more like the feeling of standing at a threshold that is both familiar and utterly new. You know the terrain on one side. You lived there for years. You built your whole understanding of yourself in that terrain. Who you are as a partner, what you offer, what you need, how you protect yourself when things become uncertain. And there is something on the other side that you can sense but not quite see, and the space between the two is where you have been living lately, hovering, not quite leaving the old, not quite arriving at the new. And what makes this fog so disorienting is that it does not feel like a problem to be solved. It feels like a waiting, a gestation, something that is not ready yet to be forced into clarity, and some part of you knows that forcing it would be the wrong move, even as another part of you craves the relief of resolution. Your energy in social situations has been different. Where you once moved through the world with a certain ease, a performance of okayness, even a genuine one, you have noticed that performance becoming more effortful, that you are less willing to produce it. The small talk that once felt manageable now feels like a form of translation between two languages you no longer want to speak simultaneously. The careful presentation of yourself as fine, as together, as someone who has it mostly handled, that presentation is taking more energy than you have, and you find yourself preferring the company of the few people with whom you do not have to translate and feeling quietly exhausted by everyone else. Not with resentment, just with a recognition that you are running on a shorter supply of pretend okay than you have ever run on before. And underneath all of this, running as a quiet undercurrent through your days, there is a question you have not quite been able to ask out loud. Something along the lines of, was the love I gave worth what it cost me? Or more precisely, was the version of myself I had to become in order to give that love, was that the right trade? Did I make myself smaller in service of something that could not actually hold the full size of me? And if I did, not in indictment of the person I loved, not in bitterness toward the relationship, but as a plain and honest accounting, what do I do with that recognition now? You have not been asking this to produce an answer. You have been asking it because the question itself is pressing up against you, because this transit does not let it stay buried, because the sky right now is asking you to look at the architecture of how you love, at the foundations, at what was built there and what was quietly, almost invisibly lost. All of these experiences, the vivid dreams, the unnamed exhaustion, the rising refusal, the fog around decisions, the surfacing of old patterns, the question pressing from beneath, they are not random. They are not a crisis. They are not signs that something is wrong with you. They are the evidence that Venus has been approaching the North Node of Fate for weeks, and your entire inner life has been reorganizing itself in preparation for a meeting that happens right now on the nights of April 6th and 7th. And now let me show you exactly what is happening in the sky and why it matters for everything you have been carrying. Venus is the planet that governs love, desire, beauty, worth, and everything we value. She is not an abstraction. She is the felt quality of longing. She is the specific weight of wanting someone who does not reach back. She is the pride you feel in your own worth when no one else is validating it. She is the moment you look at something beautiful, a particular quality of afternoon light, the face of someone you love caught in an unguarded moment, the way a piece of music arrives in the body and stays there, and feel the ache of knowing it will pass. She is also the voice in you that knows what you deserve and, when she is working clearly and without interference, refuses to accept less. She is your standard. She is your taste. She is the specific and unrepeatable quality of your desire, which is unlike anyone else's desire, which has been trying to speak to you more directly than you have been letting it. The North Node is not a planet. It is a mathematical point, a place in the sky where the moon's path crosses the ecliptic as it moves north. But in the human experience of a birth chart, it carries more weight than most planets. The North Node represents destiny, not as a predetermined endpoint, not as fate in the sense of something that simply happens to you, but as a direction, the growth edge, the version of yourself that your soul came here to become through real, lived experience. It is almost always uncomfortable to move toward the North Node, because it requires letting go of the strategies and self-definitions that have kept you safe. And it is almost always, in retrospect, the place where the most meaningful and alive chapters of your life were written. When Venus meets the North Node in an exact conjunction, which is what is happening on April 6th and 7th, what occurs is this. The things you love, the people you are drawn to, the connections you seek, the way you move toward intimacy, and the way you pull back from it stop being just personal preferences and become trajectory. They reveal themselves as load-bearing. As part of the story your life is trying to tell. The loves that have confused you, the ones that arrived without warning or logic, the ones that broke something open and rearranged you from the inside. This transit insists that they were not random, they were navigational. Every significant love of your life pointed somewhere. And right now, Venus on the North Node is the moment when the map finally becomes readable. This conjunction is happening in Pisces, and that matters enormously. Pisces is the final sign of the zodiac, the place where all the other signs dissolve back into the ocean they came from. It is the sign of dissolution and transcendence. It is the place in the zodiac where the edges between self and other become permeable, where love is not a contract or a negotiation but an immersion, where the desire to merge with another person is experienced not as need or dependency, but as spiritual recognition. Love in Pisces does not want a relationship in the practical sense. It wants an experience of oneness, and that longing, beautiful and treacherous and transcendent in equal measure, is the specific quality of Venus that is being fully activated right now. For you at this particular stage of your life, this means something precise. It means that the loves you have lost or released did not simply represent people. They represented a feeling of wholeness, a sensation of being recognized, completed, returned to yourself through the presence of another, a specific quality of being known. And when those loves ended, what you lost was not just the person. You lost the version of yourself that felt whole in their presence. That loss is what the dreams have been revisiting. That is the particular unnamed grief that has been pressing against your ordinary hours. Not the absence of the person, but the absence of the self who existed in their presence. But here is what the North Node adds. The North Node in Pisces, in this moment, is not pointing you back toward that experience of completion through another. It is not asking you to find someone new who will restore that feeling. It is asking something harder and more luminous than that. It is asking whether you can arrive at that same sense of wholeness, that same quality of fullness and recognition, and being known from the inside, without a mirror, without someone else holding the light. Whether the love you have been seeking in others can at this stage of your life be turned inward toward yourself. Not as a consolation for what you do not have, not as a second choice, a spiritual workaround, a way of making peace with loneliness, but as the deepest and most complete version of the thing you have been pursuing in every significant relationship of your life. The central image I want to offer you for this transit is the tide. The ocean does not decide when to reach toward the shore. That reaching is not the ocean's choice. It is the ocean's nature, pulled by something larger than itself, by forces planetary and gravitational and ancient, and the shore does not decide whether to receive the water. It simply is what it is, and the tide arrives and the tide recedes, and what remains after each recession is different from what was there before. A smoothing, a small rearrangement of what was permanent and what was loose. The stones turned and polished. The sand shifted but still present. Your loves have been tides. They arrived with that same quality of inevitability. You could not have refused them, and you would not have wanted to even when you could see the cost from the beginning. They reached toward you with a force that felt larger than personal, larger than the particular person and the particular moment. And they receded, and what they left behind in the sand of who you are. That is what this transit is asking you to look at, not with grief, with recognition. You are not the shore that has been abandoned by the water. You are the shore that has been shaped by it. And beneath the shaping, beneath the moved sand and the rearranged stones, there is a bedrock so old and so solid that no tide has ever moved it. That bedrock is what Venus on the North Node is pointing toward right now. Now we enter the longest and deepest passage of this transit, the part that is not about the sky, but about what is happening inside you at the level that planetary events actually reach. And this will ask something of you, not to rush through it, not to arrive at resolution before you have actually made the journey. Stay with me here. The first thing this transit is cracking apart is a belief you have held, perhaps for your entire adult life, about what love requires of you in order to be sustained, not what you consciously believe. Your conscious beliefs about love are probably wise, probably hard-earned, probably accurate in ways you would not have been able to articulate at 25. The belief I am talking about runs beneath the conscious level. It operates in the substrate of your behavior, rather than in your stated values. For most people who feel this transit deeply, that belief is some version of this. In order to be loved, genuinely, sustainably, by the specific kinds of people I am drawn to, I must make myself smaller, or safer to be around, or less complicated, less intense, less needy, less revealing of how much I actually care, less obviously affected by the presence and absence of the people I love. You learned this before you had the language for it. You learned it in the way a child learns the rules of their particular emotional environment, not by being told, but by watching what happened when you were fully yourself and then adjusting accordingly. Reducing what produced discomfort, amplifying what produced warmth, becoming very skilled over years and decades at the edited version. But here is what cracking apart is not. Cracking apart is not collapse. For a person of 45, of 52, of 60, the word dissolution carries a weight it does not carry at 25. You have built real things. You have kept real commitments. You have created stability, financial, relational, psychological, through sustained effort and real sacrifice. When I say this transit is cracking something open, I am not threatening those structures. The cracking this transit brings is happening at the level of the foundation that those structures were built on, not the loss of the shell, the emergence of what the shell was always protecting. And for a person your age with your history, those are not the same thing. You can feel the difference. What is emerging then? Something old, something you placed carefully on a shelf early in your adult life. Perhaps before you had words for what you were doing, perhaps because the world you lived in did not have the capacity to hold the full size of what you were setting aside. There is a version of yourself, your desire, your specific and unrepeatable capacity to love and be loved, your instinctive knowledge of what you actually need from intimacy, that you compressed. You told yourself you would return for it when the time was right. Or perhaps you told yourself that wanting fully was dangerous, that the depth of your own need for love would overwhelm anyone who got close enough to really see it. So you learned to manage it. You became extraordinarily skilled at receiving a smaller amount of love than you actually needed, and calling it maturity, calling it perspective, calling it having learned not to expect too much. And that managed version of desire has been standing in for the real thing for a very long time. It has been making decisions. It has been shaping relationships. It has been telling you what is possible and what you should stop hoping for. What is surfacing now, pressuring up through the texture of your dreams and the quality of your fatigue, and the refusal you cannot quite articulate, is the unmanaged version, the full-sized need, the real depth of your capacity for intimacy, which is larger than you have allowed yourself to show in a very long time, if ever. And this is not regression. This is not becoming more needy or more demanding or more fragile. This is the North Node, the direction of your growth, the territory you came here to inhabit, calling the full version of your desire back into the room where your choices are made. Because you cannot move forward in love while operating from a rationed version of what you actually want. The directions you receive from a rationed desire are directions toward rationed love. The path this transit is opening moves in a different direction. And here is the long pattern, because this is not new. You can trace it back if you allow yourself to look. You can find it in the first significant love of your adult life, in the specific adjustments you made to your own desire in order to sustain that connection. You can find it in subsequent loves, different people, different circumstances, but the same underlying move. The watching of the other person's face for signs of withdrawal or discomfort, and the rapid, almost unconscious adjustment of your reaching accordingly. The way you calibrated your expressed need to what you sensed could be tolerated. The way you told yourself that the love you were receiving was enough, even when some quiet and honest part of you, the part that operates before the self-management kicks in, knew clearly that it was not. This pattern has a name, and the name is not unworthiness in the way that word is usually used. The name is loyalty. Loyalty to a story you learned about yourself before you were old enough to question whether the story was true. A story that said, the full-sized version of you, with your full-sized needs and your full-sized capacity to love and to hurt. That version is too much. So you offered the edited version, the version that could fit into the spaces that were available. And the edited version has been living in your relationships, quietly doing its best, wondering why there is always this slight sense of something not quite landing, something slightly to one side of real connection. This transit is the moment that pattern becomes visible to you in a way it has not been before. Not because you are finally smart enough, or healed enough, or evolved enough. You have always had the intelligence and the self-awareness to see it, if you were looking directly at it. But because Venus on the North Node creates a specific and temporary condition in which the pattern is no longer sustainable at its previous cost. The edited version of your desire has grown tired of editing itself, and that tiredness is part of what you have been feeling in your body, in the quality of your sleep, in the low hum beneath your ordinary hours that does not lift when the day's noise clears. You are in between right now. And the in-between deserves to be described with the actual precision it has, rather than the vague atmospheric language most people reach for when they try to name this territory. You are not who you were in love 5 years ago. The accommodations you made then, the way you shaped yourself around what another person could hold, the calculus of your own compromise, feel impossible now. Not because you have become harder or more demanding or less willing to do the real work of connection, but because something in you has softened past the point where it can compress itself again without real cost. You are also not yet who you are becoming. You can sense that version, the one who receives love without the reflex of deflection, who wants without immediately translating the wanting into something more socially acceptable, who allows the full depth of their own capacity for intimacy to reach the surface and stay there. But you cannot fully inhabit that version yet. The habit is too deep. The old wiring runs too close to the ground. So you are here in Tuesday, in the ordinary afternoon with its particular quality of suspension, in the dinner you make and the conversation you have and the small decisions that comprise a life. In the moment before sleep when the feeling arrives that is not quite peace and not quite grief but something in between, something that belongs specifically to people who are in the middle of becoming something truer than what they were. This is not a crisis. It is a passage. And for someone who is 50 or 55 or 62, this passage carries a specific and particular gravity that younger people simply do not have access to. You have a history now. You know what your patterns have cost you. Not in the abstract, but in the specific currency of real relationships, real years, real choices made from a compressed version of your own desire. You know the faces of the people who received your edited self, and sometimes found even that insufficient. You know the specific texture of your own longing. You know what it feels like to almost let yourself want something completely and then pull back at the last moment, re-establishing the careful distance between yourself and the full size of your own hope. And you are standing in this passage with all of that knowledge, which is both a tremendous gift and a particular weight. What is stabilizing beneath all of this, and I want you to hear this slowly, because this is the actual gift of the North Node, and the thing that Venus is delivering to you in these specific April hours is not certainty. It is not the resolution of your questions about love. It is not a guarantee that the next love will ask less of you or give more. What is stabilizing is something quieter and more durable than any of those things. It is self-recognition, the beginning of knowing yourself in the act of loving, not observing yourself from a distance, not managing yourself wisely, but actually knowing from the inside without apology what you want, what you need, what you are willing to receive, and what you are no longer willing to pretend is enough. There is a decision that felt impossible last month that is beginning to feel possible. Not easy, not clear in the way of certainty, but possible in a way it was not before. Possible in the sense that the permission for it has shifted somewhere inside you, that a door you had closed and locked and perhaps forgotten about has been opened slightly, and the light coming through that door is faint but real. A direction is beginning to take shape. Not a plan, not a destination, a direction. A faint but insistent pull towards something that feels more honest than what you have been doing, more aligned with the actual size and quality of your desire. And this direction is not dramatic. It will not announce itself with certainty or relief. It will feel, in fact, like something requiring great courage, because it is the direction away from the management and toward the full-sized wanting, and that direction is terrifying in proportion to how long you have been moving in the other one. The tide does not decide to return, but it returns. It always returns. And the shore, smooth and reshaped by every arrival and every recession, by every tide that came and went over decades, simply receives what comes, not because it has surrendered its own nature, not because it has become passive in its acceptance, but because it has learned through thousands of encounters with the tide that it is not diminished by the recession, that the going does not mean the end of being. The stone beneath the sand was always there. It was never in danger, not from any tide, not ever. And the water, when it comes again, and it will come again, because this is the nature of the ocean, and the nature of the shore, and the nature of love in a life that is still being lived, will find the shore changed, yes, but also more completely itself than it has ever been. That is where you are right now. That is what April 6th and 7th are marking in the story of your love. The first practice this transit calls for is what I want to name the completion letter, not to be sent, to be written and then kept, or burned, or buried in a drawer where it will hold its work without ever needing to be seen by anyone. In the days around this Venus node conjunction, tonight, tomorrow, this week, while the energy is still moving, sit down wherever you can be alone and unhurried, and write a letter to the love that taught you the most. Not the most comfortable or the most straightforward, the one that asked the most of you, the one that rearranged something fundamental in how you understand yourself as a person capable of love and of being loved. Write to that person or to that version of yourself inside that love, and say the things that were never said because there was no safe moment for them, or because the relationship ended before they could be articulated, or because you had not yet found the language. Not to process the relationship again. You have done that, and this is not about revisiting old pain. This is about completing what is still open. Name what that love gave you that you did not acknowledge at the time. Name what you are carrying from it that belongs to that chapter and not to this one. Name, if you can, what you understand now about yourself in love that you did not understand while you were inside it. Write until something releases. You will feel it in the body when it happens, a small loosening, a slight decrease in the weight. Then close the letter. The closing is part of the practice. You are not keeping the wound open for the sake of feeling. You are completing the narrative and setting it down. The second practice speaks directly to the Venus layer of this transit, to the specific places where your sense of your own value in love has been quietly and incrementally negotiated downward. I want to call it the worthiness inventory, which is a grander name than what it actually is, which is a very simple act of honest accounting. Take a single evening this week, sit somewhere quiet with paper and something to write with, not a screen, paper, because the act of writing by hand slows the self-editing, and write without stopping to judge or justify or explain every place in your life where you have been accepting less than you actually want, not less than you deserve. That framing creates too much shame and too much abstraction. Less than you actually want, in your closest relationship or in the absence of a close relationship, and the way you have been managing that absence, in how your time is used by others, in how your care is received or not received or received and immediately moved past, in how you show up for yourself after you have finished showing up for everyone else, in what you allow yourself to ask for, and in the pause before you ask, which often contains more information about your actual beliefs than anything you consciously profess. Write it all down without self-judgment. You are not making a case against yourself or against the people in your life. You are simply seeing clearly what is there. Then look at what you have written, and for each item ask yourself honestly, have I genuinely released this want, or have I suppressed it so thoroughly that I have started to mistake the suppression for acceptance? The ones in the second category, and you will know them by the very slight catch in your chest when you read them back, are the exact locations where Venus on the North Node is doing her work right now. Those are your growth edges, not problems to fix this week, not failures to remediate, simply territory that has been in shadow and deserves, at this point in your life, to be seen in the light. The third practice is the simplest and, for people who have been in the caregiving role for most of their adult lives, often the most genuinely difficult. It is the practice of receiving. Venus rules receiving as fully as she rules giving, and the particular shadow of this transit is the person who has become, over decades, extraordinarily generous and open in their giving of love, and extraordinarily defended and uncomfortable in their receiving of it. Receiving requires something you may have trained yourself away from, the willingness to be seen as needing something, to be the object of someone else's care without immediately evening the ledger. This week, when something good is offered to you, A genuine compliment, an act of service, an expression of care or appreciation or affection, even the small, unremarkable kindness of a stranger. Practice not deflecting it, not minimizing it, not returning it immediately in a way that converts your receiving back into giving and restores the comfort of the familiar dynamic. Simply let it arrive. Feel it land in the body. Wherever in the body it lands, notice that location. Stay with it for a moment. Then say thank you, and leave the sentence there without adding to it. This will feel strange. The strangeness itself is the information. It is showing you exactly where the work is. And it will take more than one attempt before it stops producing the reflexive discomfort of someone who has not practiced being on the receiving end of love without immediately managing their way back to equilibrium. Now the sky is speaking with particular intensity to 3 signs right now. And if you carry one of these placements prominently in your chart, either as your sun sign, your moon sign, or your rising, what you have been feeling is not only the general current of this transit, but a direct and personal activation that is worth understanding specifically. Pisces, you are the home of this conjunction. Venus and the North Node are meeting in your sign, in your sky, in the very atmosphere of your fundamental nature. What this means for you is not that something is being given to you from outside. It is that what has always lived inside you, the vast oceanic capacity for love and empathy and transcendent connection, is being called to turn toward yourself. The love you have extended to others for your entire life with such natural, almost unconscious generosity has a destination it has never fully reached. That destination is you. Virgo, you are directly across the nodal axis from this conjunction, and the South Node is sitting in your sign right now, completing the picture. What this transit is showing you is the specific place where your instinct to refine, improve, and prepare yourself in service of love has been functioning as a way of indefinitely postponing the receiving of it. You keep preparing the ground. You keep making yourself more worthy. The partner this transit is pointing toward does not need you more polished. They need you more present. Scorpio and Cancer, your deep water resonance with Pisces means this conjunction lands in your emotional body with particular force and particular directness. The question it is asking you is the same question it asks everyone, but the volume is higher, the frequency more personal. Where have you been protecting yourself from love by loving first, most and most completely? Using the depth of your giving as a way of controlling the exposure of your receiving. The Scorpio wound and the Cancer wound are often the same wound, dressed differently. The terrifying vulnerability of actually needing the person you love. There is a moment at the far edge of the tide's reach when the water is neither advancing nor receding. It is simply there, fully arrived, completely itself, poised in a suspension that lasts only an instant before the next movement begins, and in that suspension, everything is clear. The shape of the shore exactly as it is, the weight and reach of the water at its fullest extension, the precise distance traveled from wherever the tide began, everything the ocean has been doing, in all its years of reaching and releasing, is visible in that one still moment of full arrival. You are in that moment right now on the nights of April 6th and 7th. You stayed for this. You chose to sit with the full weight and depth of what this transit is asking. Not the headline version, not the promise of romantic improvement and coming abundance, but the real version, which is the invitation to look at the architecture of how you love and to stop pretending that the managed version is the full one. That choice to spend 40 minutes with your own inner life rather than moving through the day without touching it is not a small thing. For someone who has spent decades caring for others, for children, for aging parents, for partners, for colleagues, for the thousand small urgencies that absorb the years of a real life, choosing to turn that quality of attention toward yourself is a specific and significant act of love. I want you to feel that before this video ends, you have been shaped by every tide that has reached you, shaped by the loves that arrived and by the loves that left, by the ones that gave you your finest understanding of yourself and by the ones that cost you the most. The shaping is real. It is visible in who you have become. But beneath the shaping, deeper than any tide has reached, there is something permanent and unmoving, something that was there before the first significant love of your life and will remain after the last. That is not what you are seeking in love. That is what you are. and the person you are becoming, slowly, in the ordinary hours of this specific April, in the quiet before sleep and the texture of your waking, that person is beginning, for perhaps the first time, to know it. If this reached you today, please like this video now. It costs you nothing, and it helps other people who need this find it at exactly the right moment. Subscribe if you haven't. I make this content for people who are willing to go to real depth with themselves, and you have demonstrated today that you are that person. And leave a comment below before you close the window. Tell me, what am I ready to receive? Write it in the present tense. Let it be witnessed even here, even among strangers, even quietly on a screen. There is more power in that small act than you might expect. The tide always returns to a changed shore, and the stone beneath, the oldest, truest, most fundamental thing in you, has been waiting with great patience for you to feel that it was never in danger. Venus on the North Node says, "The love you are worth is not the love you have been accepting. It never was." Begin there.